People who work in customer service. What is the one thing you never thought you have to explain to an adult? Years ago, I worked in student housing at a university and had to explain to a father, for well over an hour, that I could not make sure that his daughter was in her room by 8 p.m. and ensure that she never spoke to boys. Story 2. Hello, I made an online order and I see that you've charged me X amount for shipping costs twice. That's weird. Let me check. No, I see that it's the right amount, sir. You're wrong. I've made 2 orders and I've already paid the shipping cost for the first one. I shouldn't have to pay twice. Oh, I see. You've made 2 orders, sure. We can make it 1 package and only charge you once for the shipping. But can you tell me the order numbers for your orders, because the system shows me that you've only placed 1 today? Yeah, the second one was not placed today. When was it placed, sir? I don't know, like 4 months ago. But still, I've paid for this shipping cost before. Why would I have to pay again? Hello? I've placed an order paid with PayPal, but you still haven't sent my items. Checking order, sir. You've chosen to pay with PayPal, but didn't actually complete the transaction. We didn't get any money. But I've chosen to pay with PayPal. What do you mean? It's there. PayPal. Yes, you actually have to complete the transaction. We didn't get any money. Then what's the point of having PayPal if I have to pay with my own money? It's there. Payment from PayPal. Ask them every single day. Hey, I'm random name. I want my usual. Send it today, please, okay? I'm sorry, sir. I don't know you or what your usual is. Can you please tell me what you'd like in your info? I'm random name. You know me, my usual. Send it. I don't know you, sir. There are like 15 people working here. We've never spoken again. X knows me. Ask him. X hasn't worked here since 10 months ago, sir. I cannot ask him who you are and what you want. Please tell me and I'll take care of it. Never mind then. Click. Story 3. A dialogue I actually had to have with a grown-ass adult. Him, pointing at the price tag on a shirt. Excuse me, what do these numbers represent? Me. The numbers right after the $sign. Him. Yes, that's the price of the shirt. Him. Oh, I see, thank you. At least he was friendly. Story 4. You need to take the suppositories out of their foil packaging before you use them. He complained that they didn't work and were uncomfortable. I bet they were. Story 5. Oh, so many thing. 1. If you wish to return an item, you must present the item and your receipt. I cannot process a refund if you have neither. 2. No, we do not sell asbestos. No, I cannot order some in for you. 3. When water boils, it does indeed produce bubbles. If the water is bubbling once it reaches temperature, your kettle is in fact working properly. 4. Zip ties are not simply disposable handcuffs. They can be used for other purposes, and it should not be concerning nor surprising that a hardware store sells them. Story 6. My first job at 16 was Party City. One day, I'm blowing up balloons at the balloon counter, and a lady comes up to buy some latex balloons. I ask if she wants us to fill them, and she said no. She'd do it at home. Making small talk, I said, oh, you must have one of the party time helium tasks. No, I blow them up with my mouth. You just put the string on them, and they float. I do the multiple blinks, trying to work out in my head what she's just said. She fully believed. She could blow up the balloons with her mouth, and the magic was attaching a string. I tried to give this woman an impromptu chemistry lesson, she insisted. I still think about that magic woman to this day. Story 7. That if you order ice cream for 4 people on a hot summer day, but the 4 people are still like 30 minutes away, said ice cream is going to melt before the 4 people get there. And no, that is not my fault. Story 8. That we sell stuff for a higher price than we buy it in for. They were genuinely angry that we didn't buy their crap for the same price we sold it at. Story 9. I worked at a CVS in high school. Many weirdos shop at CVs, but the weirdest among them were the ones who bought diapers and then asked me if I knew how to put them on a baby. Maybe it's just my personal opinion. But if you're at the point in your life where you have to buy diapers and put them on a baby, you should have figured this out from someone other than the teenager at the cash register. Story 10. That owning a Fitbit does not make you skinny. And today I had to explain to a couple that just because the Amazon Echo Box doesn't state that it uses Wi-Fi, it will still use it as it needs it to be a smart home device. Story 11. Worked at a coffee shop, woman comes in saying that the mug she bought is defective. I ask what is wrong and she goes, it says it's microwave and dishwasher safe. I put it in the microwave to heat it up and it got hot. Yeah, it means it can be used in a microwave without breaking. Has a bowl never gotten hot when you've microwaved it? The contents heat up the container as well. Then it's not safe. Story 12. Holding title to something, vehicle, house, business license, in your name means that it is yours. There's no such thing as, that's not really my car, it's my son's car, it's just in my name. Story 13. That you actually have to pay for things if you break them. I don't mean like a little tear that happened accidentally. I mean, this woman cut up a shirt because she couldn't get it off. She pulled scissors out of her bag and cut up the sleeve and down the side, handed it back to me and walked off. I called after her and said, ma'am, you have to pay for this. And she responded with, but I don't want it, and it's damaged now, so I shouldn't have to pay for it. I then explained to her that as she was the one who damaged it, and we can't sell it that she has to pay, as is store policy, and I'm fairly sure is a given in most stores. She just looked at me and said, "Well, can't you just see it back up?" "No, that's not how it works, lady." In the end, I radioed security and a store manager, and she ended up paying for the shirt, which was 160 pounds. It was a rather pricey brand. But honestly, who thinks that's an okay thing to do? Story 14. A very pissed high society woman came to the store saying her brand new $3,000 Microsoft Surface bought by her husband was defective because she could not get internet when she was on the move. I wondered if she had a version with a 4G SIM card, but quickly realized she was talking about Wi-Fi. I tried explaining to her how Wi-Fi works and that she could not use her own Wi-Fi outside her house, but could share her smartphone internet connection. She would have none of it. She said I was lying to her and making fun of her and asked to speak to my manager, who then proceeded to tell her the exact same thing. She left almost screaming. Story 15. 1. No, I don't have the ability to find exactly where your package is right now. I don't have any more information on that than you. 2. No, I am not going to give you an entire purchase coupon because you were nice to me. 3. No, I can't stay on the phone with you while you drive to the store to return your item. If you do not need immediate assistance, I have to move on. 4. No, I can't use a coupon for item A if you're buying item B. 5. No, the item is not in the back. 6. No, I can't call you if I am responding to your request via email. If you would like to speak to a representative, please call us. 7. No, I cannot give you the item for free simply because there is no tag on it. 8. No, you yelling at me is not teaching me anything except that you are in a hole. Story 16. Working in a grocery store, deli. 1. No, I don't know what your usual is. You come in often enough that I recognize your face, but your order just isn't that memorable, and I get literally dozens of customers a day, sometimes dozens an hour. 2. Please tell me what it is you want instead of pointing to the sale sign. They change every week and are blank on my side of the counter, so I don't know what that particular sign says. 3. And please tell me what the item you're looking at in my case is instead of pointing to it too. There's steel and glass and meat between us. I have no idea what item you're referring to. 4. No, it is not a health code violation to cut ham and turkey on the same slicer without cleaning it beforehand. Lunch meat is fully cooked and ready to eat, so there's no cross-contamination possible, and we aren't a kosher deli. OSHA regulations are to clean, sanitize meat slicers every 4 hours, which we do, and takes approx. 10-15 minutes minimum. Had a coworker deal with this one the other day. 5. To that effect, neither is it a health code violation to cut cheese and meat on the same slicer. We just prefer not to because it's messy and stains the cheese, but the cheese slicer goes down about 2 hours before we close. But please tell us if you have allergies. We'll open, clean a slicer for you as needed. 6. For that matter, no, I cannot slice you something right now. We close in 2 minutes, and I don't get any extra time for cleaning. We have items ready to go in our service case, packaged but fresh-cut meat and cheese in our deli in a hurry case, and prepackaged lunch meat down at the end of our refrigerated wall. 7. No, I cannot give you someone else's party tray because it's Christmas Eve and you forgot to order one. And no, I will not take $300 for it either. That's not even remotely worth losing my job. 8. No, organic doesn't mean it's healthy. It's still lunch meat and is processed as such. 9. No, the fact that this turkey advertises no growth hormones doesn't make it any healthier than the ones that don't either. It's illegal to use hormones on poultry, intended for human consumption in the US. No one else is advertising it because they don't need to. The fact that it's on my shelf means it doesn't have any. 10. No, American cheese isn't really cheese. That's why it says cheese food or cheese product on the label. And there is literally no difference between yellow and white American other than food coloring. 11. No, sir, it's not false advertising because the pepperoni stick is individually wrapped but labeled as twin stick. That's literally what it's called, and you're only paying for the one anyways since it's priced by weight. 12. No, sir, I cannot make a sandwich for you. We are a grocery deli, not Subway. But there's one just down the street in a Jimmy John's in the plaza. Or you can buy a roll from the bakery and some meat and cheese from me and make it yourself. And no, I will not take $5 to do it for you. 13. No, ma'am. I cannot make a sandwich tray for you to pick up in less than an hour. Why? Well, the bread is frozen and takes at least 3 to thaw properly. And today is Sunday. The reason the phone rang 10 times before I answered is because we're swamped. 14. And no, I can't make an exception and take your last-minute tray order. Story 17. I worked at the airport and someone wanted to go through SA with a 2-liter bottle of Coca-Cola. I calmly explained that liquids weren't allowed through security. The man gave the most genuine chuckle I've ever heard and said, "Oh, this isn't Coca-Cola! It's gasoline!" My coworker beat me to a reaction because he very loudly exclaimed, "What the heck?" Story 18. A client bought a car from our dealership and called 2 days later to say that the back doors were not opening from the inside. Asked him specifically if the child lock is deactivated, to which he replied, yes, it is. Brought the vehicle back to us. One of our salespeople opens the door and deactivates the child lock while getting in. Opens the door and the client is absolutely mind-blown that the door is suddenly opening. Story 19. I used to work at Aaron Brothers. They had the famous buy a frame, get another for a penny sale. People would try to return one frame, which obviously isn't allowed because then you're getting one frame for a penny. You have to return both frames. Seeing the blank stare of confusion as I explained that to people was always entertaining. Story 20. If the closed sign is up, it means we're closed. Why am I still here then? Because I work here. But it says closed. Your work ends when it's closed. Well, that sure is news to me because that's not what my boss told me. Story 21. You're not more important than any other customer, which is why we sold whatever you're looking for to people who came in here before you. People really show how narcissistic they are. They're offended by the world not revolving around them. You genuinely get people who can't believe a store didn't refuse to sell items to other people, on the off chance that the main character comes in and wants one. Also, it's sold out because you waited until 2 days before a holiday and other people came in a week ago. Story 22. Explaining that having your nasty-ass minivan cleaned in a $20, 15 minutes, express wash and vacuumed service will in fact not magically replace missing paint and remove 24 Jolly Ranchers melted into the carpet. Story 23. The package carrier says they delayed my package due to a hurricane. I paid for overnight shipping. Your company has trashed me. Sir, we didn't delay your package. The carrier is a different company, and there is a literal hurricane over the distribution center. Or, I paid extra for overnight shipping and you haven't shipped it yet. Me, on Monday morning, sir, you ordered Friday at 8 p.m. We close at 3 p.m. We don't work weekends, and neither do the shipping companies, so the soonest you could possibly receive it is Tuesday if we shipped it today. Additionally, you didn't pay extra for overnight shipping because we only offer one shipping method, and it is overnight. Story 24. Worked as a server at a higher-end steakhouse that had a beautiful patio. I was working a lunch shift on a day that was completely overcast. Looked like it could start pouring rain any minute, so we didn't open up the patio. The patio always had tables and chairs, but we didn't open any umbrellas or set any tables. A lady came in and asked for a seat on the patio. Weird due to the weather, but whatever. I walked her out to the patio and set up a table for her, and as I was walking away, she asked if she could sit in a sunnier spot. None of the umbrellas were open. There were no sunny spots because the sun was not out. I just looked at her and told her she could have her pick of any of the tables. She looked around and it was like it finally dawned on her that it was not patio weather. Years later, and I'm still not sure if she thought I had some magical weather powers or if she thought if she just wanted it to be sunny strongly enough, it would be. Story 25. Things don't have warranty after the warranty period. If you break something, you don't have warranty. Warranty works by fixing the product, not giving you back the money or a totally different product. Story 26. You cannot use the restroom with other people in a high-end cocktail. We are trained to have our eyes on everything at all times. I've had to tell grown-ass adults that you only enter a single toilet bathroom with another person to do BJ someone or BJ, and trust me, I've personally been on all ends of all of those scenarios. But I have the taste to do it in a dive bar like a goddamn gentleman. Story 27. That a color copier cannot magically make your black and white image into a color one. I've had to explain this to 2 different customers over the years and know of at least one instance where it happened to a coworker. Story 28. Worked at an electronics store. Some lady came in to buy a Mophie charging case for her iPhone. You know, the cases you can charge up, which will charge your phone a couple times. Well, she was asking what the cable inside the box was for, a micro USB cable. I explained that it's to charge the case up. She didn't understand. I explained the case has a battery in it. You charge up that battery. Your phone goes in the case. If your phone battery is low and you're out and about, you turn on the case and it'll recharge your phone, and it has enough battery capacity to charge your phone usually once. Long pause. She goes, wait, so you have to charge up the case? I go, yeah. She goes, oh, well, that's stupid. Long pause by me. What's stupid about that? She goes, well, that's stupid that you have to charge it. You shouldn't need to do that. You know, because how dare batteries need to be charged? She must be an electrical engineer that knows something I don't. So I say, ma'am, if Mophie figured out the global solution for unlimited electricity, I don't think they'd be selling phone cases. She gave me a super pissed off expression. You know, the one where she thinks she's still right and stormed off. The world is full of really stupid people. Story 29. Yes, the stairs indeed go up and down. No, the elevator does not go sideways. I'm really sorry you didn't know there are fish in the ocean. No, I can't do anything about it. No, our housekeeping services will not wipe your butt. If you're not able to do it yourself, I'm going to need to ask you to leave our premises. Of course, you can complain to the hotel director about it. Kick them out. I am very sorry you put your iPad, iPhone, and 3 other devices on one outlet with a cheap converter and started a fire in your room that destroyed them. We will not comp for your devices. Had to call security for this. Luckily, authorities were still around because we had a damn fire. Story 30. To process a return, you need either the receipt or the physical product with you. Realistically, you should have both. If it's just the receipt, you could have just kept the defective item. If it's just the item, you could have stolen it or bought an identical thing at a cheaper retailer. But most stores are fairly lenient with this because they don't want trouble, and most customers are at least 60% honest. You can't just go up to a register and say, I bought some produce here, and they went bad too fast. I don't know what they're called or how much I paid, I want a refund. Beyond that, people really think that the absolute basics of a business are a scam when they first start figuring out that what we charge for items is more than what we pay the farmer or factory or artist for them. Though realistically, there are usually steps between farmer or artist and the store or restaurant you're standing in, further increasing the price. When customers at stores or restaurants do the math themselves, they are constantly thinking things like, I can make this dish for $5 at home if I also use my existing pantry staples. Why is it $22 at the fancy gastropub? Or, I can get a skein of yarn at Joann's for $7. Why does this sweater cost $40? They usually come to the technically right, but actually extremely wrong conclusion. You just want to make money. Yeah, we do. In addition to the 900 other things that create higher costs. For consumer goods than raw materials, yes, businesses want to make a profit. And it's impossible to explain that to an infuriated customer in a polite way. When a customer starts boohooing that big businesses only want to make money, which I've gotten working for a failing family-owned hole-in-the-wall the same as I've gotten working for a global billion-dollar company. The only way to answer their questions is both involved and extremely condescending. Turns out the response is not to really answer their concerns at all. Story 31. Back in the late 90s, I was working retail at a dollar store. One fellow who had one of those faces that made you wonder if he was related to himself came up to me and asked, I crap you not. Do you have the thing with the thing that comes out? I gave him a second to see if he would realize what he had said and provide some detail. After a beat or two, I said, I'm sorry, sir. You will have to be a bit more specific. What thing are you looking for? He made hand gestures, almost as if he were pulling open a door or something, and said, one of those things with the thing that comes out. Managing not to lose my temper, I said, Sir, what does the thing do? He said, It makes coffee. I said, Are you asking if we have coffee makers that have filter baskets that can be pulled completely out? Yes, he said. I replied, No, sir, we don't have the thing with the thing that comes out. We only have the thing with the thing that swivels out. Sorry. Later, he came up to me. He held up a box of 35-gallon trash bags. He asked me, Will these fit in that? And he pointed at a trash can that was clearly marked 50 gallons. I said, No, sir. He asked, Why not? I said, Because that is a 50-gallon trash can and those are 35-gallon bags. He looked at me blankly for a moment. I added, 35 is less than 50. Ah, he said, nodding sagely. Story 32. I work at an area of natural beauty where the attraction is a 15-minute walk from the car park on a path on the side of a cliff with 180 steps. No, there is no bus or train to take you to the main attraction entrance. This is an area of natural beauty, not Disney World. Closed means closed. No, I will not stay for an extra unpaid 20 minutes because there was traffic. We were open for 11 hours before you showed up. No, you did not fly from halfway across the world to only visit this place. Otherwise, you would have known our closing times before visiting. My favorites are, visitor, I'm not parking down there. That car park is too far away. I'll never be able to walk up that hill. Me, you are aware the only way to see the attraction is to take a 15-minute walk that is not flat. With 180 steps down and then 180 steps back up again, it's a 4 kilometers round trip by foot. If you can't walk up that small hill of 30 meters, you won't make it to where you want to go. Visitor, how dare you? I want to talk to your manager. Manager, repeats the exact same thing I said, visitor. Well, then we will just drive there. Manager, you can't. A car doesn't fit on the path that is on the edge of a cliff filled with other people walking. Visitor, what kind of customer service is this? We are just leaving then. Me and the manager. Okay, have a nice day, PSA to the unfit and those with serious health problems. Please don't visit rural countries like Ireland and expect not to have to walk anywhere. Please read signs. We have had to call so many ambulances because you didn't read any info before attempting the most exercise you've done in 30 years in a single day. And now you've passed out on the path. Story 33. I worked as a waitress for 8 years. I had a patron order a salad with oil and vinegar as the dressing. I brought the salad to the table and asked if anyone needed anything else. Everyone was happy, and I went on my way. A couple minutes later, I got that hand signal, please get over here. I come over and ask how everything is doing. No. Joke. My patron asked me why the oil and vinegar weren't mixing. I did my best to explain the very complicated reason of why oil and vinegar hate each other, but she wasn't having it. She told me she's had oil and vinegar dressing mix before at other restaurants. I explained that there was likely a bonding agent in the dressing, and it was not just oil and vinegar at those other restaurants. She just looked at me. I then asked if she wanted a different mixed dressing. She said she would be happy with the dressing she ordered. She just wanted to know why it wasn't mixing. Story 34. Several things I had to explain to various adults over time. Not all of it is from customer service. I can't remember the exact amounts, but 20-year-old couldn't understand why payslip said $2,000, but deposited in the account was only like $1,500. The difference was before and after income tax, which is automatically withdrawn from your pay before getting paid out. Idiot only read the top line before tax. That American Express credit card is still an American card, despite it being issued by a national non-American bank. And the store can't process international cards back then. Just because the store accepts you pay in dollar or euro, i.e. instead of local currency, doesn't mean the change in my drawer will magically change currency. The store accepted 5 different foreign currencies, and sales happened about twice a month. I don't control the store price. If I say the card terminal can't accept, you willingly pay 5 cents more. So it is a nice big round number, then the card terminal can't do it. I will not cause a complete crash and lockdown of my till in peak rush hour with 10 waiting customers in line, because you wouldn't listen when told twice already. Story 35. If you throw an electronic device into the wall, it won't be covered by warranty, and it is certainly not my fault that said device doesn't start after doing that. Story 36. Ice is what makes the drink cold. If you don't want ice, the drink is going to be room temperature, not cold. I cannot emphasize this enough. It was an iced coffee made in-house. It wasn't soda or water. She then threw the coffee on the ground when she realized it wouldn't be cold without ice. Story 37. I worked in pharmacy for quite a while. The amount of adults who had no idea how insurance worked was startling. I was sort of shocked to see how many people had literally no understanding of the healthcare system, but it makes sense. By making it difficult to understand the intricacies of the healthcare system, it makes it easier for companies to profit. I'm no longer in healthcare, and I will never go back to it. Story 38. That he has to order a substantial meal in order to have a drink because it was the law at the time. UK, slightly before our 3rd lockdown in a Tier 2 area. I explained to him that he could order a small meal, and as long as he still had a bit of food left on his plate, he could keep ordering drinks. He could order 20 drinks for all we cared. Anyway, he just didn't get it at all. We kept going round in circles. He thought he had to order a meal per pint, despite me explaining how it worked to him numerous times. And he asked if he could order a pint if he was eating in a couple of hours. Then he asked to speak to my manager, of course. I also had to tell another customer that they're not allowed to have a BBQ in the pub's beer garden. Story 39. Sort of customer service. But I have had to explain how the USPs works to more than one client. The conversation usually goes like this. Me. Blank veterinary. How can I help you? Client. Yeah, I got a postcard in the mail that says my dog is due for stuff. Me. Okay, I can definitely set you up with an appointment to get those taken care of. Client. But I just did them yesterday. You saw Fluffy yesterday and did them. Me. Oh, well, let me just make sure everything's set on our end. Looks up client and confirms that yes, everything due has been performed okay. Yep. Looks like Fluffy's all up to date with everything until next year so you can toss out the card. Client. But why did I get it? Me. I'm sorry? Client. But why did you send the card? I did everything already. Why did you send me a card? Me. Because our corporate office prints those cards off about a month in advance and sends them out. Blank veterinary does not actually control when they get sent out. They probably mailed those 2 weeks ago and you just now received it. Fluffy is all caught up though, so you can just throw it out. Client. But why did I get it now? Rinse. Repeat. I should not have to explain this at all, but the fact is, I have done it multiple times. Bonus points if they have updated everything for Fluffy, but at another clinic and expect us to know this automatically. Story 40. When I worked on tech-focused retail, every Christmas we had a couple of these. On 23.12 or something similar, had to explain people how it is possible that some of the most popular devices are no longer available due to high demand, and then watching and listening to them lose their and getting angry to customer service for ruining their Christmas. Story 41. Your credit card needs to have money on it when you're checking into a hotel. Giving me your maxed out credit card to hold until you get paid isn't a thing. Story 42. If you want to continue using this service, you need to pay your bill, or why their services were suspended after they filed a chargeback. Feels like I'm talking to a child each time. Story 43. I worked in box office ticketing for several years. We do not control how fast mail is delivered to your home. If it was sold out when you asked the colleague to my right less than 1 minute ago, it's almost certainly still sold out now. No, we cannot discourage young people from attending orchestra concerts, and there's no problem with them enthusiastically cheering during the applause. No, I cannot tell you A, if your ex-girlfriend is attending this event, and B, where she is sitting. If you ask me anything good coming up, I'm either going to tell you the popular shows in the future or the things I'm personally interested in. I don't know what constitutes good to you as you are a stranger. If you're picky about what events you like to attend, ask specific questions. No, I don't know about upcoming children's programming in Winnipeg while working at a venue in Toronto. If you want to leave a ticket for someone else to pick up, please provide their name rather than, my sister will be right here. She's blonde with a black jacket. Story 44. Worked in a coffee shop, bookstore. We specialized in manga and comic books. You could either buy them or take a drink and read for as long as you wanted. Like we didn't have any restrictions. You could read for 8 hours by buying a 1.5 euro coffee. Still had to explain multiple times a day that yes, you have to order and pay a drink if you want to sit and read. There was a good library where you could go to read for free, but we were a business and needed to make money. I've had people insulting me. Story 45. I have had to explain to a shocking number of people that cellular signals can be blocked by structures, and garages and large buildings are well known for blocking cellular signals. I have also had to explain to a shocking number of people that battery life will vary based on usage. It will drain faster while you use it and slower while it's doing nothing. And even more surprising is the people I have to explain signal performance to people who live through having to step outside to make a call because there was no signal inside. Story 46. Okay, so this one always got me. We don't sell what you're looking for. I don't know where you can buy it because I work here, and we don't sell it. I don't work in every store. Therefore, if it's not something I have ever bought, why the duck would I know where you can get it from? Just look on Google, idiot. Story 47. Not customer service per se, but the ER, which has become very similar because the hospital gets more money with better reviews, so they push all the customer service Bs. Anyways, I had to explain to a guy why we had to clean the maggots off of his legs. Story 48. That 30-plus-year-old ski boots that you've stored in an Arizona desert attic for 99% of their life do not get warranty coverage when they absolutely shatter in sub-zero temperatures because they've degassed all their plasticizers. Story 49. I'm sorry you have had to wait, and I know your toe has been hurting for the last 3 months, but we have to treat serious injuries and illness first. Every air nurse, everywhere. Story 50. My coworker and I work at a deli. One day, a customer came up to them asking why their meat smelled weird. My coworker asked, well, how long have you had it? And then the coworker said, a few months. Why? Apparently, the dude never even knew that expiration dates existed. He said that his ex-wife always prepared foods for him. He pointed at various other foods and asked if they had expiration dates too. So my coworker had to explain that each food had a different lifespan. Story 51. Working the front door at a micro center in March when lockdowns started. We couldn't repair iPhones because you need to be certified by Apple to open them and use genuine Apple parts to replace broken ones. Our only Apple tech was quarantined, and we hadn't received a shipment of Apple parts in weeks. Apple stores were all closed, so whenever someone called Apple to tell them their phone is broken, they would look up their list of certified repair shops. Micro Center was the only one open on Long Island as far as I could tell, so they would send people to us to get their phone fixed, and I had to tell them we can't do it. They would always say something about, oh, but Apple said. I don't work for Apple. I can't guarantee to meet their promises. Some guy blew up on me and threatened to beat me up in front of my manager. I didn't even get a break that day, huh? I even tried calling Apple and letting them know everyone they're sending is getting mad because we can't fix their phones. They didn't stop. I don't like Apple. Story 52. Years ago, I worked at Target. This was when TV signals changed from analog to digital, and converter boxes were a commodity. I had to tell a customer that no, I was not going to call the neighboring Walmart or Best Buy to see if they have any in stock. Story 53. Worked at a place that did buy, sell, trade. There was a huge number of people who came in asking for free, expert advice to sell their items to other people. Sorry guys, but I'm not the free eBay pricing guide. Story 54. Worked at a party store. The number of times I had a version of this conversation is soul-crushing. Customer. I want balloons for my kid's birthday party. How much would that cost? Me, quotes price customer. That's too much. I'll just buy a pack and blow them up myself. Okay, do you need a helium tank? We can rent or sell you one. Customer. What? No, I'm just going to use my lungs. Me. Okay, but just want to make sure you know if you just blow them up, they won't float. Customer. Usually with a lot of profanity thrown in. What? You're just trying to scam me. I assure you I'm not trying to scam you. I just want to make sure you're not disappointed the day of your party. But fine. Let's ring you up. And then, almost without fail, we'd get a furious customer returning a week later, screaming that we sold them defective balloons that wouldn't float. Story 55. Working as a hostess in a restaurant on Christmas a couple years ago. We had a full restaurant and about a 3-hour wait for people to be seated, and we filled up on party table, 5 people reservations more than a week ahead of time. A man walks in, says he has wanted a table for 10 people immediately. There are people standing and waiting all over the entrance to the restaurant, and it's very obvious that we are busy. I start to explain how busy we are and that we wouldn't be able to seat them for a few hours, but we could put their name down, and they could come back closer to the time a table would be ready. This man yelled at me, a 4 feet 11 inches girl on Christmas Day, for not having a table ready. And, can't we just push something together? He went on and on about how it was Christmas, and he wanted a nice meal with his family, and couldn't seem to understand he couldn't bully his way into a table. Story 56. I had to explain that toilet paper rolls shouldn't be returned to a store because it was not a decent thing to do, especially after using them all. I had to explain to a woman that the disabled staff member who couldn't talk didn't intend to scare or offend her by making noises at her and smiling. Another woman wanted the most putrid-smelling cigarettes to light up and air over her fence to her neighbors so they could experience what she felt when they smoke every day. I said, "You do know, smokers aren't offended by that. You want to spend money on cigarettes, light them up in your yard, hold them within your hand, and stand out there every day because your neighbor's smoke comes into your yard. Okay, you probably want Marlboro or Camels then." Story 57. Sir, the CD is actually inside the case that you are trying to jam inside the CD player. What you need to do is open up that case, remove the disc, then insert it into the CD player. Story 58. I used to work in a pancake restaurant. One day I was serving a customer. He didn't even bother to read the menu, and he asked for pancakes with some specific jam. I told him that we do not have it. I the menu and we do not have this kind of jam. He said that I should go to the nearby shop and get some for him because he doesn't want to eat pancakes with anything else. Yes, I needed to explain to an adult man that that's not how restaurants work. Story 59. That if you don't pay your whole phone bill, the overdue part will be on your next bill. You get charged $50 per month and only paid $20 in January? Cool. February is going to be $80. Story 60. Yes, I realized that when you were given your social security number back before the war, they told you to never tell it to anyone. But you called social security, and that's how you're identified in our system. So you're going to have to tell it to me, or I can't help you. Story 61. That you have to pay back the money you spend on a credit card. Lady legit thought banks just handed them out. I asked what she did when it stopped working, and she replied, I usually get another one. Story 62. 1. Yes, the can of Crisco has a picture of crispy fried chicken on it. No, the can does not contain crispy fried chicken. 2. No, birth control pills are not 100% effective. This was explained to a woman apparently quite near her delivery. And 3. No, we don't have fans that only blow cold air. I worked at a Kmart for longer than I care to admit, so I'm sure I could come up with lots more. But these are the first 3 that come to mind. Story 63. I live in France. Here we use AZERTY keyboards instead of QWERTY. That's just how it is, and it's been like that for decades. I had to explain to some foreign dude that, no, unfortunately we did not have any QWERTY keyboard in stock, but he could order one online, and that no. It wasn't a conspiracy. He literally started shouting in the store that this was an attack on human rights and brainwashing. Story 64. So, I teach kids to ice skate. With pandemic, we kick the parents out of the rink once the kids are ready. Parents of a 2-year-old insist that they cannot leave their child alone. I explain that the coaches are here to help and look after the child, but I will not be leaving him. He is unable to walk. Come on, why? Do you sign up your 2-year-old to be taught to skate if your child is unable to walk on normal land skates, to the point where you have to stay with the child until a private coach takes over? Didn't think I'd have to have this conversation with an adult multiple times. Story 65. I had to explain to someone that they could not return a 3-month-old rug, which had the following issues. 1. Smelled of tobacco all over. 2. Smelled of urine in places. 3. Felt greasy and yet also sticky when touched. 4. Had a brown stain, which I'm fairly sure was faces. 5. When shaken, released a white powder all over the shop floor. The customer explained that this was flea powder, which leads me to point 6. 6. Fleas. A lot of fleas. When they pulled the Karen card, my manager agreed to take back this quasi-biological weapon and issue a full refund. Story 66. If you come to me, a medic, complaining of symptoms that may, in fact, be a serious medical condition that threatens your life, I will, in fact, transport you to hospital. I don't give a sugar-frosted damn if you might have to wait or had plans later in the day. You can't go anywhere if you are past. Story 67. I once wished a woman to have a nice day as she was leaving. She came back and asking why I said that. Did she look like she was having a bad day? Was it something on her face? Why did I say have a nice day? I had to explain to this adult woman that it was just a thing I said when I said goodbye to people. Somehow, she'd gone through her entire adult life without hearing someone say, have a nice day. And no, judging from the way she spoke and her complete lack of an accent, she wasn't a tourist from another country that speaks a different language. Story 68. The passport machine being off. At my old job, we had a photo booth in our store. One day it malfunctioned, so we turned it off, cordoned it off with ropes, and put 3 signs on it, one on the outside, one of the inside, and one where the photos come out. The photo booth had no lights on all. This didn't stop a woman from getting in there, though, and she then complains to me why it isn't working. I explained to her, but she still wants to know why and why there is no signs. So I told her it was obvious the photo booth wasn't working because of the signs, ropes, and the power being off. She went off cursing in a huff. Story 69. If your husband has been taking 2-quarter tablets because his dose increased, he can now just take 1/2 tablet. We have already split the tablets for you, so he only needs to take 1 piece. But before he took 2-quarter tablets, now you're telling him to take 1/2. That's not enough. You're shortchanging him on his dose. He needs to take 2 ma'am, 1/2 tablet is the same as 2/4 farm tech in retail pharmacy. Story 70. I worked furniture retail over 20 years ago before we had a name for Karen, but they certainly existed. I had to explain, slowly like I was talking to a child, to a grown-ass woman that she could not return her glass-top patio table, that she left out all winter, glass-top smashed, swept up, and put into a beer box that was now in front of me. Couldn't fathom why I was saying no. She had kids with her watching this behavior. Future Karens. Story 71. 1. Employees have no control of the prices or the quality of the food. 2. Don't piss off the people who make your food. 3. Don't rip the dresses you're trying on. 4. The air is not really a first service place. If you have a headache, you're going to have to wait until after we see the person who has had a stroke. 5. Just be nice, please. Story 72. Long story. I had to explain to an adult woman that the rubber bands that were accidentally left on her lobster's claws, my fault for letting them leave the pass, were indeed not edible. I had assured her that they were food safe. Not a minute later was I called back after she attempted to eat said bands. Her teenage child just stared at her like she had 3 heads as she attempted to berate me. Story 73. I'm not in customer service, but I never thought anybody would need to be told. Yes, the ice cream cake, made only of ice cream, would have to be kept in the freezer. No, the refrigerator won't suffice. This has happened many times over the year. Story 74. I had to explain what copy and paste was to someone once. I worked for an e-commerce site, and she regularly sold upwards of $2 million in products a month. She was having problems documenting her sales, stating it took too long to type every individual order, thousands of orders, in her Excel sheet. I finally asked her if she had tried just copying and pasting the information. She had no clue what that meant. Explained it to her and changed her life. Story 75. I have several that a frozen cocktail is cold, that a purple rain cocktail is purple, that lasagna has pasta in it, that restaurant lasagna is not going to taste the same as the lasagna your mother makes at home, that saying that someone has an allergy to something means that they are allergic to it, that a KFC chicken filet burger is not made of fish. Story 76. Buy 2, get 1 free does not mean you buy 2 of the items and one of them will be free. This dude literally put up his fingers to show me what it actually meant. I told him, no, I understand. I don't think you're understanding. Story 77. My sister is in customer service for a mattress company and couldn't explain to a person that them falling asleep while doing substances and lighting the mattress on fire was not covered in the warranty. Story 78. I can't make a sundae in an ice cream cone. I can't just fill the cone with hot fudge and put ice cream on top. A, the fudge will fall out, and B, the ice cream will melt immediately and fall off. I can put a cone on top of your sundae. No, it won't taste different. Story 79. If a shelf edge label says buy 1 get 1 free on McVitie's biscuits, then just because someone has moved the sign and put it in front of the Strongbow 18 PEKs, this does not mean the offer applies to the Strongbow. Story 80. If a sale tag is attached to a barcode sticker, it applies to that one single item. It does not apply to every item on the shelf. It does not apply to items on the shelves above and below that one. It does not apply to any of the items on the other side of the aisle. Story 81. I work in a greetings card retailer in the UK, and at Christmas, a lady demanded I test all her envelopes to make sure that they sealed properly before she bought them. I had to explain 3 times that if I licked them, and if they sealed, they would be useless to her. Didn't understand me, and asked to speak to my manager. Story 82. There is no Burger King sold at Burger King. Like no sandwich called the Burger King. We had this 70-year-old guy throwing a fit like a toddler because he wanted a Burger King. After about 15 minutes of him being there, one of my co-workers just told him we changed the name to a Whopper. Story 83. Not long after Smart Water came out, a lady came in looking for a bottle because her daughter had a test the next day and needed it to help her be a little smarter for it. That was an interesting conversation. Story 84. I worked in a grocery store as a cashier. It's not my fault that you don't have enough food stamps to pay for all your food. No. I will not call and find out why you don't have enough. No, you can't take all the food you want when you can't pay for all of it. Story 85. Your finger is not a valid unit of measurement. Holidays are not business days. Weekends are also not business days. I cannot tell you over the phone why your check engine light is on. Many more. Story 86. I work in an optician's. Had to explain why the customer couldn't see properly through the display frames. They honestly believed that just wearing the frames with plastic lenses would sort their eyesight. Had to explain about prescription lenses. Story 87. I work in customer service and banking. I've lost count of people who have said something to the effect of, I've been a customer for 10 years. Can't you waive X fee? No, Karen, I can't. Next time I hear this, I might just respond with, cool, do you want a participation trophy? Story 88. When you're phoning to see if your package is in, you really should let us know your name. And when asked what name it is under, the proper answer is not mine. Story 89. You're required to bring photo ID so we can compare it to your face. If you refuse to show your face to have it compared to your ID, we will not give access to what you came for or release your sensitive information. Story 90. The stupidest that come to my kind in the many years of dealing with the general public. That the handle on your mug is not on upside down. Fossils do not grow in fields and are not farmed. The flamingos at the zoo did not just fly in. Story 91. If you dislike a product you bought online, we can refund you, but you will need to return it. No, you can't carry on using it and also get a refund. Either you dislike it enough to return it or you like it enough to keep it. Story 92. You can't just order 5 different types of food in a restaurant and only pay for the food that you liked, even though you didn't taste the other 4 things to see if you liked them. Story 93. That you're not allowed to follow me to the back storage room because you think I'm lying about not having these shoes in your size. Why the duck would I inconvenience myself by lying about that crap? Story 94. Customer, you won't sell me a banana? Sorry, sir. We use frozen bananas and puree them for smoothies. You wouldn't want one of the... Customer, fine. I'll just order a smoothie and take the banana out. Sir, Story 95. Worked as a vet assistant for a bit. Had way too many conversations with pet owners about how it doesn't matter if they are anti-vax. Our state legally requires their cat, dog to maintain an updated rabies vaccine. Story 96. You asked for a quote for 100 pieces. You can't place an order for 5 pieces at that price. If you want that price, you have to order 100. This happens weekly. Story 97. At my job, I have to tell people not to talk to me a certain way or interrupt them to say, let me finish. It's like working with loud barks and no bite. Like a dumb dog. Customer service workers have read it. What's the most disrespectful thing a customer has said to you? I once asked a customer the standard, hey, how are you doing? As I started to scan his purchases, he responded with, pretty good banana head. And then he robbed me. However, that wasn't even the rudest thing a customer has said to me. It was the woman standing behind the robber that actually took that cake. She stood there and watched me, a scrawny teenager, have a guy pointing a gun at my face for several minutes. After he walked out with his gun still pointing at me, she came up to the register and demanded me to ring up her merchandise because she was running late for something. I was so shocked at what just happened that I actually completed the transaction while I was still trembling. She then asked me if I was just robbed, and I said, yes, I think so. And she said, wow, that's crazy, and left. Right after she left, I finally realized that I should probably call the police. They came pretty quickly. Unfortunately, nothing came of it and they never caught him. I did get to go home early that day, though, which was nice, I guess. Story 2. Working as a cook at Waffle House, you get some high. It's probably the drunk guy who said if I wanted a tip, I'd need to come around the counter and do BJ. I told him to get the duck out of my restaurant. Story 3. I used to work in university administration. A woman called and gave me her daughter's name because she had some questions about her account. I couldn't find the student. Tried everything. Name, social, student ID number, nada. She begins to verbally assault me and claim I'm useless. Turns out she has 2 daughters. She called the wrong school for the daughter she was asking about. Story 4. I was stuck on a register for 8 straight hours at 16 years old and had to pee. Was going to need a change of clothes in 3 minutes levels of urgent. Lady stopped me after I abandoned my register and wanted something we didn't sell refunded immediately. I declined, citing my epically urgent need to pee, offered to be back in 5 minutes or less. She twisted her face into an ugly, spoiled grimace and said, what use are you even then? I bet she never wagered she would haunt my urination efforts for the next 20 years. I still ask myself how long she'd been wearing diapers, that my clear need to pee elicited zero sympathy. Story 5. I worked in a jewelry store that had a jeweler on site every day, but would be scheduled to leave about an hour before closing. One evening, a customer came in just as the jeweler was leaving and begged him to repair the thing that night, since it was a simple fix. The jeweler agreed, but joked with the customer if he was late for dinner, the customer would have to be the one to explain why to the jeweler's wife. The customer, an older dude, I'd guess 50s or 60s, said something along the lines of the jeweler being in a great position to always make it up to his wife. He turned to me and said something to the effect of, you're a woman, you know? Your husband just has to give you sparkly things, and you'll forgive him. I pointed out I was just engaged, and my ring was the only piece of jewelry I had received or wanted from my fiancé. I was just happy walking side by side with him, being equal. Well, the customer looked me right in the eye and said, oh, honey, you will never be equal to him. He's always going to be ahead. I was flabbergasted, and he kept going. I I told him very quickly that he was a customer and I liked him, but he needed to stop talking and keep it that way. He kept insisting that the natural order of things was for me to be less than any and all men, especially my future husband, and I shouldn't be mad about it. I finally said I was going on a smoke break, code for I need to get out of here before I lose my cool, since I don't smoke, and walked out for a breather. Story 6. I supervised a call center, so I took escalated calls all the time and had rude comments daily. The worst was from my boss. I had severe abdominal pain for months in front of everyone. He loudly proclaimed that it was all in my head and I couldn't handle the stress. It turned out to be a cyst the size of a G fruit on my pancreas requiring surgery. I went on disability for the next 7 months. I no longer work there. Story 7. I worked at a major bank in downtown Chicago for about 5 years. I was a banker, but we were having a super busy day at the teller line, so I jumped on to help and do manager overrides, etc. This lady comes up, and immediately I'm thinking she's going to be difficult. She throws her check at me and said, "Deposit this in my account, and I have a job interview in 5 minutes, so you better hurry." I just smile, dead-eyed, and take the check and fill out the form that she didn't, and deposit it. Immediately, I get an error message saying, "Previously deposited item can't process." So I'm like, okay. Clearly, I need a min to figure this out and tell her that it's been previously deposited because the numbers match and I need to look into it. But if you are late for your interview, I suggest you come back, because this will take several months. She blew up. "This isn't hard, you idiot. Your job is so easy. This is hilarious. You take a piece of paper, my money, and put it in my account. Why are you so ducking dumb?" Well, I'm not dumb. Actually, the opposite. And I was one of the acting managers behind the teller line due to my efficiency, knowledge, and perfect track record. But I turned bright red and just couldn't believe someone could talk to me. I said, "Come back after your interview and we will look into it and see if it's a processing error, but you will not speak to me that way again or I will not help you and you can call customer service." So she grabs her check and leaves and starts screaming and runs out. Meanwhile, after the line calmed down, I researched her account and found some. 1. Her account had security warnings all over stating customer was abusive and shouldn't be handled in branch, security threat, etc. 2. Her check said previously presented because it had actually been deposited in electronically by her the day before into her savings account through the app on her phone. So about 20 minutes later, we get a call and it's the lady asking to speak to the manager. We could hear them yelling back and forth, but basically this lady called to say I ruined her chances of getting this job because I made her late, that I'm an idiot and I should be fired immediately, and that she is dating a manager from a better branch and she's going to tell him all about this. Well, my boss did not back down and explained that she herself deposited the check yesterday into her savings through her phone, so it looked like she was trying to do a double deposit and fraud the bank, and she really should keep track of her account better. Also, she said she isn't welcomed in our branch anymore and basically told her to kick rocks. So, yeah, the lady still tried to say I was the one who put it in her savings, and I was a liar. The entire situation was upsetting because I couldn't believe someone could treat another human that way and be such a ducking-a-hole and idiot at the same time. Always a time working with the public. Story 8. When I worked retail at 18 in a party city, a group of grown women cussed at me and called me a bulimic git because the store didn't have the right-sized gift bags they wanted. Story 9. I was a service advisor for a Dodge dealer in Florida. We were also a Fiat dealer. Anyone who worked for a dealer that sold Fiats will tell you Fiat customers are a special type of crazy. Service advisors are used to people cursing and yelling because their cars broke down. I've had people threatening to whoop our ass, people trying to drive away with their car with the second key. None of that bothered me. The worst encounter I had was with about a 60F. She brought her car in with a no-start issue that was intermittent. She decided to wait and prepared her by telling her that the tests we run can take up to 3 hours on the battery alone, and any other test we may need to run. Warranty batteries have to be ran on a GR8 machine, which can take up to 3 hours in some cases, but usually around an hour. She got upset and tried to stir up a little rebellion in the waiting area, but the rest of the customers ignored her. After about an hour, the mechanic comes up and said the battery's good. But when he was looking at the adaptive, the battery sensor was dropping voltage randomly, so it needed to be replaced. Had one as stock and put it and everything checked out good after. She spent hours there total. I grab her from the waiting area and tell her, "Hey, everything is fixed. You're good to go." Before I can tell her what was wrong, she was like, "I knew I needed a new battery." So I tell her no. Actually, it was the battery sensor. She literally went insane that I didn't replace her battery and pretty much started stomping around like a little kid. I tried to calm her down to explain why it was the sensor, and she just kept saying bullcrap. I don't want to hear your bullcrap, which I was fine with, but then she shushed me like I was a child. I took probably the deepest breath I could and said, "Ma'am," which I was immediately cut off again, and she said, "I don't think you heard me." I said, "Shush. I about lost my crap." I stormed out my office. My coworker, close friend, sat in the office next to me and watched the whole thing. I went straight to my service manager. She hated anyone coming into her office. She was horrible. I tell her she needs to get the crazy get out my office right now. She went to go straight to blaming me. Then my coworker came in and was like, no, it's not what you think, she's nut. SM went to my office while I waited in her. She comes back and said, oh, she started cursing at me as soon as I said she wasn't getting a battery. So I told her to leave and not come back, or I'm calling the police. Might not have seemed like much be shushing. Someone is like the most disrespectful thing to do to another adult in a professional setting. Story 10. Working register at a grocery store known for upbeat employees and friendly conversations with customers. A lady was buying, among other things, several nice cuts of filet mignon. I said brightly, oh, when is steak night? She goes, any night is steak night if you can afford it. I didn't say another word to her after. Story 11. I worked in high-end luxury fashion, and most of the time the wealthy customers were respectful. I made a ton of money myself, too. So it wasn't what I consider a regular customer service job, but a big part of my job was interacting and delighting the customer. One time, a woman wanted a Chanel bag exchange, and we are happy to do that if the bag was purchased at our department store. If not, we can't take in or exchange merchandise that was not our inventory in the first place. Hers was purchased in Paris. She made a very big deal saying her mother and her daughter and her had a ladies' trip to Paris, and she bought this Chanel, but changed her mind and wanted either to return it or exchange it. I very politely told her I understood her request, and also very politely explained how that was not something I could do since it was from another store, and from another country at that. As a solution, I said she might be able to call overseas and work it out with the original store. Her face actually contorted, like she was possessed. She started Karening out before Karen was the official term, just shouting and cursing, telling me what an awful person I was, and how I was being deliberately obstructive just to piss her off. I assured her that was not that case. The part that got me was she finally spat out, what would you know? You're probably too poor to have even gone to Paris. I'm not going to get into my financials, but I came from a good family, and I was making money myself. My own mother owned 10 Chanels at the time, and I had been to Paris, as well as London, Spain, Israel, and Jordan. I sort of laughed a little in her face at the ridiculousness of the comment, but I thought how mean that would be to say to someone who hadn't been to Paris. It had no bearing on this situation or my answer to her anyway. As always, she demanded a manager who told her the exact same thing I did. So she did that thing where she accepted it from a manager, but then asked to have me fired because she lied and said I was rude to her. The manager had heard the whole thing and told her that simply wasn't true, and if that was the only thing she needed, she should leave. The lesson here is you never know who you're talking to. What it told me was that she actually couldn't afford the bag, hence the freakout, and she was talking to someone who was probably doing a lot better than her in the long run. Still, I never forgot that miserable git who said I was too poor to travel to Paris. Story 12. Worked at a children's camp as maintenance man. Had to clean crap off the walls multiple times, but once a girl of like 12 was washing her hands, looked dead at me and her cabin leader, throw the paper towel on the ground and said, clean it up, garbage man. Anyways, before I could say anything, her cabin leader immediately went in on her about disgusting behavior and disrespect. Watching her cry, pick up the towel, and apologize was the sweetest revenge. Story 13. I was working at a fast food restaurant, and it was toward the end of the day, and we were out of napkins in the lobby. Had a Karen ask me for some, and when I told her, we were completely out and wouldn't have any until the next shipment. She told me I needed to leave the restaurant and walk down the street to the gas station to get some napkins for her. I just looked at her with a blank stare and walked away. Story 14. This wasn't something that was said, but done, rather. A male customer asked me to turn around so he could check me out. I politely refused. He didn't get the hint and then flashed me. Story 15. Worked in an inbound call center, and a woman called in mad because she'd called in shortly before and been hung up on. Later found out she'd been verbally abusive to that person too. She insisted I'd been the one to hang up on her, wasn't, and said I was just being a git because I was on my period. I was even more insulted that a woman would say such a thing. She got hung up on again too. Story 16. I spent years as a customer service lead at a Winn-Dixie grocery store in Central Florida that only had security cameras inside the store. One time, a woman came up to the desk very upset because she'd left her wallet in the child's seat section of her cart and forgot it when she put the cart in the corral in the parking lot. She had apparently been keeping the cash she needed to pay her rent in the wallet, so she was understandably panicked about having lost it. I calmly explained to her that we only had security cameras inside the store, not in the parking lot, but I brought her into the back office and showed her all the footage we had just in case she'd maybe dropped the wallet before she made it out the door. Unfortunately, the wallet was still visibly in the cart up until she walked out the front door. Rather than accepting that there was nothing further that we could do to help her find out who might have taken it once it was in the parking lot, she immediately accused me of lying about the security cameras and told me that I clearly stole her wallet myself and was just trying to get away with it. She literally called the cops, who watched the security footage with us again and explained to her that I was indeed not lying and that there was nothing more we could do for her. She left in a huff, still insistent that I had personally stolen her wallet and had somehow convinced the cops to side with me, without ever talking to them without her also present, and said that she would be calling the store director to report me for theft. It was really unfortunate that she'd lost her wallet and her rent money, but I still can't get over the fact that she would go to such lengths to avoid taking accountability for her own screw-up that she would threaten my job when I'd genuinely done nothing but try to help her as best as I could. Story 17. A man called me a useless git, among other things, because I wouldn't do anything about the guy kicking the back of his cinema seat. I worked in a call center for booking the cinema ticket. I did not work in the actual cinema he was in. I wasn't even in the same country. I explained this to him several times, and he just kept screaming abuse at me. Oh, and I was 15. Lovely day. Story 18. My close friend died in a real bad accident. We lived in a small town, and she was young, so it made front-page news. Some random woman came up to the window, shoved the newspaper in my face, and was like, "Look at this beautiful young woman. Such a shame she passed away. She looked so kind." I started crying, shut to window, and walked away. You'd think she would put two and two together and realize that the girl who passed was my friend, but nope. The grief vulture made a formal complaint about me being heartless for not listening to her gush about my dead friend who she never met. Story 19. Got screamed at by a customer because we'd gone to take away cups half an hour before we closed the cafe. Amongst the screaming was the comment, "At least I can afford the coffee instead of having to work for the company. I crap you not." When he eventually realized he wasn't going to win, he used a voucher for a free drink from his place of work. Story 20? I've got a few. When I was a waiter, had an old couple come in, and they were notorious for being rude and hating teenagers. They accused us of not making our own pizzas when we're literally making the dough for it in the back so we could make more pizzas. Told the guy, yes, we do, and we're making more dough right now. He still didn't believe so. I marched him up to where our register was, and you could see directly into the kitchen, and he saw the dough machine going. He tried to get out without paying, but I told him if he doesn't pay, I'll call the cops. And I also told if he doesn't leave a good tip, we'll call the cops and say he didn't pay. They always paid in cash, never card or checkbook. Never saw them back in again. Another time when I was working retail, it's a Sunday night, so we have to pull all the ad stickers down. We were pretty much done, and lady comes in and asks if the ad prices are still good, and I said yes until tomorrow morning. She didn't believe me, so I grabbed the ad that had the item she wanted and showed it to her and said it's still good. She still didn't believe me and wanted me to go through my garage bag full of ad stickers to find it. Told no, I'm not doing that. Then she told me I wanted her time as she lives 10 miles away and now she can buy her item. I said the price is still good and don't whine to me about a 10-minute drive when I drive 45 minutes to work each day. Same retail place, a mother told me my mom failed as a mother because I wouldn't let her or her teenage failed abortion play kickball or ride bikes at full speed in the store. Story 21. Not a customer, nor my store, but I did work with the scumbag as he was training to be a store manager. I will call him Joe. Joe, a guy in his 50s, was a handsy person. He would pat your back, tub your shoulders and such if you did a good job. First bad experience with Joe. Him and I talked about plans to finish a project. We were standing shoulder to shoulder. After the talk, he pits his hands on my shoulders, then slowly rubs them down my back to my butt. I reported him that day to my boss. And a few days later, he magically had his own store. Sadly, this didn't happen anything. A few weeks go by, and all of a sudden, we get a call from my boss saying this store needs help. Everyone knew whose store it was and said no. A few days later, I found out that every single employee from Joe's store had left all at once. Why? He got too handsy with a few women. Even worse, I know one of the women was underage because I met them shortly after Joe took over the store. So Joe got fired once everything was out to the public, and I hope he is rotting in jail. Story 22. A woman wished me a good night after an otherwise uneventful interaction. I smiled and said, "I shall endeavor to persevere." She turned back, smiled cheerfully, and said, "Oh, talking above your education." Then she left. It was such a shock. It took me a few minutes to realize I had been insulted. Story 23. Managed a restaurant similar to Applebee's. Once during a lunch shift, our busser called out sick, so I'm the only one clearing tables. Unexpected rush hits. My only server and bartender are overwhelmed. So I ask my hostess to help me out, but she's a young suburban girl who would rather quit than touch dirty dishes. So I'm trying to offer some extra pay for her to help, when a Karen flies up to me and says something along the lines, "So you're just gonna stand there and flirt with the pretty little hostess while my waiter does all the work?" "I'm sorry, ma'am. I was just asking her to give us a hand with tables." "Yeah? Yeah, I caught you, so don't make excuses. I just wanted her to know so bad that I was already trying my best and very stressed about the situation. She was so ducking smug, thinking she caught me slacking off. Why was she so convinced I was doing nothing? What makes a person's brain assume the worst of anything they see? Story 24. I work at a fast food restaurant, and luckily I haven't run into anything crazy, mostly just passive-aggressive. But there's been the occasional loser. 1. You need to get your crap together from a mother with a child after she waited 20 minutes. 2. Context. I still wear a mask at work, and I'm usually the only one who does. I normally don't wear one at the drive-through window, but at some point I was covering for a coworker and didn't bother taking it off. This guy pulled up, looks at me and goes, "Are you sick?" I feel like I should be getting out my hand sanitizer, but I can't find it. 3. Guy waits the completely normal amount of time for food, if not a bit shorter for this specific order, so impatiently that he's literally standing a step behind the counter. And when I bring him his food, he says in the most passive-aggressive, fake nice voice ever, "Can I get an order of fries for waiting so long?" Wish I could have told him to get back on his side of the counter. 4. Told to shush by a woman who then tried to cover it up 30 seconds later by claiming she was talking to her kids. Our mics are good. I can hear kids if they're in your back seat. I heard nothing but her husband, who stayed quiet most. 5. Not something said, but I'm a woman. The amount of times I've had a man wink at me when their girlfriends or wives are in the passenger seat is wild. Additionally, I've had a lot of suggestive "how you doin's" and other greetings like that. And really, those aren't disrespectful in and of themselves. But I've got to say that getting them unwarranted while I'm just doing my job is frustrating, sometimes funny, mostly frustrating. Story 25. Worked in a hardware store and was basically told to ask every single customer if I could help them with anything. Asked an older guy if he needed help finding anything on our jungle of a nut and bolt aisle, but he didn't answer. So I asked again, and he screamed that if one more person asked if they could help him, he'd leave. You bet your ass. I sent the biggest "I don't give a duck" employee we had over to him to help him out. Story 26. Oh, I have one. I worked at a sandwich place. Think Jersey Mike's exactly, but smaller of a chain. From 16, 18. I'm only 20 now, so it was somewhat recent. I take a phone order. Lady orders a few subs and doesn't pay for them over the phone, says she'll pay at pickup. It was about 2 hours before we closed. 9 p.m. closing time during pandemic. We don't really warn people until it's around 7:45 that we close soon, but I happened to let her know we closed at 9. She never shows up. It's just my shift manager and I. We were both young. I was 18. She was 23. It's around 9:15, and we had sent the younger kids, like the 2 16-years-olds closing with us. I know I was also a kid. Home as they couldn't work past 9 p.m. on school nights legally, the lady calls. We tell her we're closed. We pulled the register. She didn't pay, so there's nothing we can do. Turns out she was in the parking lot. She hangs up and starts banging on the doors. She calls back after a few minutes, and all she says is, "If you don't bring me my ducking sandwiches, I'm going to shoot this place up." My manager calls the general manager immediately and tells him this crazy lady won't leave. And since it's just the two of us and he doesn't live far, he says he's on his way. She's still banging on the doors and trying to pick at the locks. It only took him a little under 10 minutes to get there. She sped off as he pulled in. People go ducking nuts for fast food. Story 27. I have been in customer service for 30 years. Customer, you are the most ignorant, stupid person I have ever talked to. You do not know how to do your job. I want to speak to the manager. Me. I'm the manager. Duck people who think they know more about your job than you do. Story 28. I work in a place that is divided in multiple sites that we switch place to during the week. Customers will come, throw a toddler tantrum, then come to the main site the next day to complain about the workers on the other sites, the same that they just saw, and they don't even realize. A customer called me incompetent to my face, then the next day, as I resolved his issue from the main site, he complained about me to me. Sometimes it feels like they don't see us as human. Story 29. The most disrespectful thing that was ever said to me was nothing. I worked at a small commuter airline where we walked the passengers out to the planes on the tarmac. Everyone was allowed one carry-on bag. Any other bags had to go in the back to comply with FAA regulations. This woman had 2 bags with her. I said, "Ma'am, I'll take one of those bags from you, and you'll get it back immediately upon deplaning." Didn't even look at me or say a word, just kept walking. Once again, I said, "Ma'am, I have to take one of those bags from you, FAA regulation." Still nothing, just kept walking past me. Finally, I cut her off from climbing the plane stairs and said firmly, "I can either take one of those bags from you, or you won't be allowed on this plane." At the point, she literally threw one of the bags she had into my chest, still didn't say a word to me, and walked past me onto the plane. The guy walking behind her came up to me and said, "Sorry, she doesn't talk to the help." I don't think I've ever been so mad at a complete stranger in my life. Story 30. Had a car salesman go from 0 to 100% real quick. Guy was having issues with software printer, called in to help. All smiles until I had to verify his store code, which unfortunately ended up being bong. I said each letter individually, which led him to say it together, which got him embarrassed because he had clients in the room. I got an earful and then he talked to my sup. Story 31. How much time you got? Here are the top 2 I can think of at the moment. 1. Dude threatened me physically while on the phone when I did T-Mobile call center customers. I basically gave up trying to reason with him and said, "Really? You're going to threaten me? You're 1,000 miles away." And he said, "Well, if you saw me next to you, you'd do as I say. I'm from Texas. I'm big." 2. Was working at a Kmart. Had a lady asterisk whistle and snap her fingers at me asterisk as I walked by to get my attention. What this lady didn't know is that I was a temp who was there to help tear that place apart because the Kmart was shutting down. The store was going to be closed in 3 months anyway, and they couldn't keep people on to help do tear down. So unless I pulled a gun on a customer with my banana out, no one was going to be firing me anytime. Ergo, I had 0 ducks to give. After she did this, I walked right up to her and said, "Lady, I'm not a dog. Get some manners." And walked off before she even had a chance to utter whatever her stupid request was. She tried to complain about me to a manager. Guy saw it was me. I was also by far the hardest working out of all the temps. And he's like, "Yeah, nothing's going to happen to him." Story 32. Women went off on me, going in depth about how people like me should feel ashamed and have no place participating in society. She mentioned again and again how she's actually a therapist, so she knows a lot about what it means to treat people right. This was because I didn't have a free coupon to give her for her to use on her literally $1 item. This probably isn't the most disrespectful anyone has been, but it's definitely up there as far as how ridiculous it is to act out like that for a ducking dollar. Story 33. Worked the kitchens at 24 hours a day fast food chain. Weeknights we usually ran 2 staff, 1 cooking me and 1 on the front. Lunch was 30 minutes, and we had to plan it because there would only be one of us manning the whole store, but it was usually quiet. Early on in the shift, we had a bunch of drunk guys walk up to the drive-through window and start banging on the door for me to open it. Policy was to not serve people walking through drive-through. So I put on the speaker that I can't help them, as they are not in a car, and they need to leave the drive-through. Fast forward to my coworker's break, and it's just me running the store. The guys come back in a car. And when I open the window for them to pay the driver, jams the window open, and the 3 dudes climb through the window into the store. They chased me around the store for almost a full 15 minutes until my coworker got back and called the police. Why did they chase me, you ask? To prove to me that if we had just served them at the window, we wouldn't have been in any danger. The best part is that my manager gave me a written warning the following week for being unfriendly towards customers in drive-through. Story 34. Not said but done. I worked as a manager at a gas station, and one day I was working to help put inventory away with my boss, and a customer comes through and asks for smokes and obviously gas. He hands me money after I tell him the price, and he pays, and I tell him to have a nice day. He goes out and tries to pump his gas, but doesn't realize it's not like Wawa Pump, where you press the button. It picks your grade. You have to lift the handle, then pump your gas, so I go out there and show him, and afterwards, for no reason, he spits in my face, in front of his girl and his kids. How are going to teach your children that kind of respect? I swear to you it was the closest I have ever been to brutally murdering someone. I remember this vividly because there were a pair of scissors in my vicinity and my level of discipline even surprised me. I didn't do anything, didn't even press charges, but I should have, because here in PA, spitting on someone is considered a felony. He was subsequently banned from the store, and my boss finished the rest of my shift that day. And I went home because my blood was curdling. Story 35. This is more of a sequence of events than a verbal barrage. I used to work in discount variety. One afternoon while serving, an elderly couple came around to my counter with a basket that had a few items in it, one of which was a coffee mug. I remember the items being shifted to one side of the basket. I didn't think anything of it at the time. I remember scanning the mug, turning around to wrap it in some tissue paper, and noticed a blob of something on my right hand. Got rid of it and moved on with the transaction. It wasn't until the couple had left and I went to put the basket away that I saw more chunks in the basket. I began to take it to the back of the store to clean it up, when I noticed that there was a pinkish grouping of chunks on the floor that had previously been out of my line of sight. Then it clicked. This elderly man had vomited into the basket onto the floor and continued around with his wife and their vomit-filled basket to finish their purchases. Neither of them felt the need to tell me about this pink, chunky, putrid mess that had been left behind ahead of them leaving. The manager on duty got to clean it up. You guessed it, it was me. Story 36. Not something they said, but something they did. When I worked at the grocery store, a lady came in who didn't know any English. We had a section of bulk food and she needed help getting some peanuts. She wanted the entire bag full, so she asked me to hold it. I figured it out through context clues as we didn't speak the same language while she filled it. Not a problem. After she had it filled to her liking, I'm standing there trying to hand it to her and she just shakes her head and proceeds to take a small handful of peanuts and try them. I guess she maybe wanted to make sure they were good. I'm not sure. Anyways, she's chewing them and starts to make this weird face like she doesn't like them. All of a sudden, she spits them all over me while I'm standing there holding the bag still. I was so shocked, but obviously didn't want to lose my job for yelling at her, or honestly slapping her. So I slammed the bag down on the counter as hard as I could and she jumped. I stormed away and told my manager, who did nothing about it. This lady was a regular shopper and we couldn't lose the sales. I'm so glad I don't work in retail anymore. Story 37. I was working at a gas station at the time. A man and his daughter were checking out and I was about to hand him his change. He decided he wants to give me exact change instead, after I already have my hand out about to finish the transaction. I politely tell him the drawer to the register is closed and it would just be easier to take his change. There was also quite the line behind him, so I wanted to move things along. This man proceeded to cuss me out and then call me stupid for not being able to count change back the right way, and then stormed out with his daughter. I had another woman with her daughter come in one day. Her daughter, probably about 4 or 5 years old, asked her mom about my job. Her mom said, "That's where you'll end up if you don't go to college like she did." Right in front of me? Okay, that's disrespectful to anyone. But I did go to college and I'm still here. People are ridiculous. There's nothing wrong with working anywhere at all, and the audacity of this woman to even say something like that. I'm not currently in customer service, thank goodness, and I hope I can stay away for a long time. Story 38. Once, while working in a shoe store, I bashed my ulnar nerve in my elbow on a ladder so hard that I had a vasovagal syncope, which like a fainting spell. The pain was intense. I was pale, sweating, extremely nauseated, and desperately needed to lie down in case I passed out. I decided to shut the shop door so no customers could get in. As I was doing that, some customers, a woman and her daughter, walked in, and I explained my situation and said I need to lie down. The woman was like, okay, and started browsing the store. Confused as to why they lacked the social skills to just leave, in my desperation, I lay down right there on the floor of the store. And then the woman walked up to me, pale, sweating, very ill and in a lot of pain, and asked to try on a shoe in X size. In hindsight, I should have told her to duck off. But what did I do? Went and got it for her. I still get so annoyed thinking about that situation, and the fact that I didn't stand up for myself. But also how people have zero compassion for people who work retail or hospitality. Story 39. I used to work at a pizza place, and on Fridays, things got pretty busy. It wasn't out of the norm for the amount of time it took to make someone a pizza would get longer due to how many orders we had. So in comes this guy who wants a pizza. I let him know how long it would take and asked if that was okay. Some people don't want to wait that long. He agrees, and we eventually start on his order. Maybe halfway through his wait, he started to demand a discount because of how long it was taking. He was insistent that was the right thing for us to do, and that the customer is always right. I told him he would get no discount. I told him how long it would take and got his permission for the transaction. If he wanted a discount, he should have asked for one up front, and he still wouldn't have gotten one. No one gets discounts when it gets busy like that, unless we mess up your quote or pizza. Story 40. I worked the window at the post office for several years, so I have many stories. But the worst customer was an elderly Karen that brought in a piece of mail for Aetna and asked me to call them to let, then know she wasn't a customer. I gently explained that she needed to call. It wasn't something I could help with or even be privy to due to privacy laws. This crazy old wench flipped out. Every bit of internalized misogyny came out of her in that moment. She proceeded to tell me that I was a lazy, ugly git for refusing to do my job and that I was the whole problem with working women these days. That my supervisor, a man of course, was much more capable of helping her, and she would make sure he knew how stupid and unhelpful I was. My supervisor came out and informed her that surprisingly, I didn't have time to call every company that sent mail incorrectly to every customer, and my job was actually just working the retail window. Then he made her angry ass leave with her mail piece in hand. Story 41. Many moons ago, working at a department store, a lady was trying to buy a bunch of stuff on a super busy day. Well, when I swiped her credit card, a message popped up saying to call this number for approval. Strange, but it's happened before. Well, I call, and the woman on the phone is incredibly rude and condescending, but she did tell me that she cannot approve the transaction. I tell the customer that, and she gets irritated. She screams gibberish at me and demands to have the phone. I hand it to her, and she is screaming at the bank lady, then hands it back to me, which the bank lady said, no matter what that customer, I cannot approve this transaction, and she knows why. Goodbye. By this time, there's a long line behind her, and people started guiding at her to stop holding up the line. She finally retreats, storms out cursing up storm. I wanted to cry, also in case anyone is wondering why I didn't have her call. This was before cell phones were common, and I assumed she would get approved because I had never had someone be denied. Story 42. I work in durable medical equipment, largely working with patients over 60. Most are very nice and appreciate the help we try to provide them on their treatment journey. However, a lot of people I work with have memory issues, and many of those folks say stuff like, "None of you ducking people care, you're a bunch of con artists who should be in hell." even though pretty much every person on fixed income gets their equipment completely for free. I'm male and have a low voice, so I usually don't get it too bad because I take old people bias. But the women on my team get some of the worst human behavior I've ever seen. Some old people are ducking vile, and we have refused to help some on the basis that they suck and we don't like them. I've literally had people scream slurs at me, saying they'll die if we don't help them. And I tell them we won't work with them if they can't talk to us without personally insulting everyone. They usually just say, "I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to the recorded line." Story 43. I was a barista in a very multicultural area of a major city as a teenager, and most of my coworkers were Chinese. Someone ordered a coffee, and when they saw it wasn't me making it, but one of my coworkers, he shouted, "I don't want his dirty, ducking fingers anywhere near my drink." He snatched it away anyway and stormed into the grocery store. Heard some screams moments later. Apparently, he had thrown his hot drink over a woman in front of her young daughter. Cops were called, and never saw him again. Story 44. Worked in an adult video store in the early 2000s. Guy walked in and bought a previously viewed tape for like $10, except whoever fetched the tape that matched the box had grabbed the wrong tape, and the guy ended up watching 10 seconds of adult film. So he did what any red-blooded American would. He ejected the videotape, stuck it to a board, and filled it with buckshot. Then he tried to return the shot-up tape for his money back. When I wouldn't accept it back, he threatened to fill me with buckshot too. The off-duty but still in uniform prison guard that was a regular changed that dude's mind quite quickly. Story 45. Had a customer years ago who was a sweet old lady who'd always talk and praise about her son, how he's such a kind soul, and was also a good worker despite having similar leg disabilities to. About a few months later, after all this praise, he finally comes in my line and is the nastiest craphead imaginable, demanding everything to be bagged and done for him this specific way, and his order is food stuff, cold cooked food, and body cleaning utensils. And when we get to the finish paying time, his EBT didn't take the cleaning stuff, like his deodorant and shampoo. This dude tries arguing they should be on EBT to me about it because you can technically eat it. And after a back and forth on it, he chomps a bite out of the deodorant and demands to see a manager on why he has to pay money for it, despite that he can eat it. Called my manager over, and when she got there, she just sat there mortified at him. That is one of my favorite crafty customer stories ever, and I've got tons. Story 46. When I was younger, we had a guy come in and try to sell us substance. When we politely declined, he went into the bathroom, pissed like a gallon's worth of pee onto our floor, then announced his deed to us before flipping us off and calling us pussies. Story 47. I worked at a store photo lab one afternoon, and this woman came in wanting to pick up her photos. She gave me her last name, but I didn't see her envelope. She got super angry and insisted I find them. She yelled, "I want to speak to your manager. I'm never coming here again." I searched and to no avail. I asked for her little envelope ticket when she rummaged it out of her purse and handed it to me. It was for the competing store across the street. I explained calmly that this is the incorrect photo lab. She instantly went from insane angry lady to embarrassed. She felt so bad. I had to leave to help another customer. I watched her through the corner of my eye, and she took a deep breath and stood there for a moment. I think about that day all the time. I bet she was having a terrible day, and then this situation happened. I hope she thinks about our interaction and treats customer service people better. Story 48. Working Christmas. Line always 30 people deep, no matter how many people ringing. But I was the only one at this point, as we had too many orders going food-wise. Had a couple come up, the epitome of trashy regulars who have always given us trouble. Ringing them up for $100 plus dollars of goods when the beef jerry rang as $9. They went ballistic, proceeded to scream at me that it was $6 according to the tags. I went out with the guy, he showed me, and someone had stuck a few bags in front of the smaller ones right beside it. I came back and explained things like this happened, but yada yada, I can't change it. Mind you, these people have always screamed about the price, even if nothing was off. Proceeded to yell at me and berate me for being a lying piece of crap. That's illegal to false advertise and we'll sue you personally. Go hit yourself. And then once I finished ringing them out, they also screamed that they got 50 cents off extra from a deal they didn't know about. 19-year-old me had a ton of fun. Story 49. Busy day, peak hour, 5 staff down, 25 cars unfilled. 2 people trying to run an entire service department. Old lady in line turns to someone behind her. "God, the people here are lazy. Always have to wait these days." To be fair, everyone else in the line looked really uncomfortable, so I just leaned around the register and asked, "Excuse me, we are 5 staff down and everyone is working their hardest. However, if you wander around the store and can find a single member of our team not doing anything, do me a favor and send them up here to serve you. Otherwise, I can call a manager." She was really embarrassed, so I doubled down when she got the register and didn't say anything except, "Do you want me to call the manager?" And she like, "What? Why?" And "Because you seem to think we aren't working hard enough, so I assumed you want to complain to management." She just looked down and said, "No. Still shops at my store and still can't look me in the eye." Stuff like that truly craps me. Story 50. I had a man come into a store I was working at by myself when I was 19. He stood there leering at me and waited until all other customers had left, and I said, "What do you want?" He proceeded to ask me. When I finished my shift, I replied that wasn't his business, and repeated, "What do you want?" Rather rudely, as a lone young girl, I was feeling quite on edge as to what his intentions were. He says to me, "Maybe you're shy because you haven't been ducked before." While one second I was feeling venerable, as soon as he said that, my fight-flight instinct kicked in and rage just spewed out of me. The thought of being made feel like a victim by this insidious predator, a grown man, was huge in stature. The vulgarity and asinine response he received from me was not what he was expecting. While in hindsight, being all alone, it could have turned out very differently. I was so enraged at his audacity and predatory behavior, my sense of consequence was not at the forefront of my mind. Story 51. Long ago, I worked at Books A Million. Most of the time I was in the coffee shop. Policy was, if the customer used a credit or debit card, we had to check their ID. Lots of regulars who had already been going there. Since before I started understood and had no problem verifying who they were, and since they were regulars, I got to know them quickly and never asked again, except for this one elderly lady. She would come in regularly, but she never showed me her ID when she would use her card. She'd grumble a bit, then pay with cash. This went on for weeks, with me even telling her that I know who she is, and she would just have to show me one time, and I'll never ask again. One day she complained again, and I said, "Mom, I'm just doing my job." She said that's what the SS said too. Story 52. I not spoken, but in action. Used to serve this ultra-git. He would come in on his Bluetooth headset on calls and bark an order at us, then continue his conversation, no other pleasantries, or a thank you. He would also come in and sit down and say stuff like, "I made $2 million last year," loudly, then look over to see if you heard. One day he came in, barked an order at me while on a call as usual. Then I named the price and he threw his credit card at me. It bounced off my chest and landed on the floor. He just stood there and gave me a look like, "Pick it up then." I said, "Come around here and pick it up yourself." He was embarrassed AF because I refused to move, and he had to come behind the counter in front of all the other customers and pick up his own card off the floor. Ducking hated that guy. Story 53. When I was in college, I worked on a golf course. I worked on a snack cart and drove around the course to serve members drinks, snacks, beer, etc. Part of the job was to swing by the pool from time to time and sell to the wives and kids. An 8-year-old asked for some type of ice cream we were sold out of, and he promptly said, "Why don't you get a real job?" when I said we are sold out. Story 54. I worked at a sporting goods store and had some rich middle-aged dad come in on a really busy day and bought a large item that we didn't have in stock. The person at the register didn't even bother to have someone go check. After the guy bought it, I went into the back to go look for it and then had to be the one to tell him that we didn't have it. He got pissed and started complaining about how he was wasting time because he was paying a babysitter $25 per hour to watch his kids while he went on a shopping spree. We also had a couple that demanded that I let them take this full-sized camping tent out of the box and assemble it. When I refused, they started using that "you'll lose the sale line on me. I told them that was fine since I didn't make commission anyway. Story 55. I worked at a very happy place on earth, and the last time in my career that I ever said, "I'm sorry," to a guest, they responded with, "You are sorry." After that day, I only said, "My apologies," in similar situations. Also got called a ducking a hole more than once and had the last guy that said that to me thrown out along with the rest of his party. Story 56. I worked in a supermarket while I was at university. My job was filling the milk fridge, and to ensure it was rotated correctly, we filled it from behind, pushing it forward. One Saturday, as I pushed it forward, a little kid, maybe 5, yelled out, "Look, Mom, there's someone in there." To which the mother replied, "Yes, and that's why you have to do well in school, so it's not you." Took a lot not to inform her that I was at university, as we're about 50% of the staff there on Saturday. Story 57. I worked in the service industry for over 20 years and dealt with a lot of bullcrap. But oddly, the memory that bothers me most was when this old man at a table one afternoon wouldn't stop staring at me. Finally, he asks me if my hair was a wig. For some context, I do have extra thick, slightly kinky hair, and it was cut into a super cute, bouncy A-line at the time, so it did have a lot of body. But dude, what the heck? What if it had been a wig? I was like 30 at the time, so if it were a wig, maybe I was going bald due to chemo treatment. Why the duck would you be entitled to ask someone this? Note to old white men, mind your business. You're not entitled to an explanation of anyone's appearance. Story 58. Some tall Irish guy who was put on a wait list by me came back 1 hour and 30 minutes late after I texted him. His table was ready. I informed said table was already given away and he would need to be added to the wait list again. He straight up said he would bash my face in if I didn't let him in. Luckily for me, my manager was a 6 feet retired Air Force guy who came to my defense. Asked him if he would bash him in. Guy got quiet, real quick, and left. Story 59. We had just reopened after pandemic lockdown, and two little eshays, worst kinds of teenagers if you're not Aussie, tried to steal from us. I gave them opportunity to hand them over and just leave, however. Instead, the guy shoved me to the ground and his GF spat on my face. I immediately ran to the bathroom to wash my face. Thankfully, my glasses protected my eyes. However, I was in pain from being shoved and started to cry. When I left the bathroom while my supervisor on the phone to the police, I had a lady who had been there for the entire thing and could see I was crying said, "Are you not going to serve me?" Still in shock, I asked what she needed. She replied, "I need metal straws." I explained we don't sell them, and she responded with, "So then I can all this way for nothing? Look at me, not my feet, I'm talking to you. Is this how you treat your elders?" Story 60. I worked at the reception desk for a boutique law firm in my early 20s. It was three of us basically answering phones and screening calls all day. A client kept calling, wanting to speak to the paralegal working on his case who happened to be out of the country due to a family emergency. After the third time he called and I picked up, I told him the paralegal wasn't in the office, but he could email her. I was familiar with the case and knew it wasn't an emergency. After I refused to pass him along to the partner, again, it wasn't an emergency and the partner would have been pissed to take his call. He told me I was useless as a receptionist and lacked an education. I was working there during my gap year before law school, and after he hung up on me, I went to the bathroom and cried a little. Story 61. Worked briefly as a phone operator for a flower company over Valentine's weekend one year. Was having what I thought was a very usual conversation with a guy about our options and delivery when he suddenly yelled something along the lines of, "I've never had so much difficulty buying something in my life, you ducking idiot. Good luck in your life because I don't know how you've made it this far," and hung up. Also, something about being a failure. The call afterwards, though, was a man trying to order flowers to be sent to his wife in rehab, and he was one of the kindest customers I've ever had. He asked about my day and the customer, and although I shouldn't have, I lightly mentioned that some people had been pretty horrible today, and he spent the next few minutes talking about how terrible those people are and how nice he thought I was. So it all balanced out. Story 62. It wasn't disrespectful to me, but to his wife. Was working at a Krispy Kreme and was explaining the precautions we take for nut allergies, which I took seriously because I was also allergic to nuts. The man smirks and say, "My wife is allergic to my nuts too." The wife smacks his shoulder, the teenage daughter frowns, and the youngest girl was... I did my best not to laugh. Story 63. Worked for online sport retailer. Someone called in a panicked, like practically screaming, because she couldn't figure out how to tighten her swim goggles. She then proceeded to tell me how all of this was contributing to her alcoholic husband to commence drinking. What the heck? One more, worked at Starbucks for years. One early 4 a.m. opening shift where we're barely waking up. First customer comes and asks for a pastry. I open the display to grab and hand to him, to which he aggressively told me to smile. What in a hole. Story 64. Had a customer unload on me because he wanted the shoes we had in our window. He was trying to describe them and we didn't have anything even close. I offered to go look with him, and he just stormed off grumbling about how I was useless for not knowing what we sold in our own store. Later on, I went to look which ones he was on about. Couldn't see anything like them, until I noticed the poster in the window of the store next door. It wasn't even an advert for shoes, just what the model in a totally unrelated business product happened to be wearing in the picture. I've had plenty more. So many people are just utter garbage. Story 65. I was working retail after my mother passed and my dad was losing his mental capacity. It was just an in-between job, and I really didn't mind it. However, while I was working there, this couple noticed I spoke their language and were the same origin, South Korea. The idiot husband turns to me and ends with, "So what do your parents think about working retail after college?" My reply, "I don't know, sir. Both my parents are dead, so I can't ask them." His wife was so mortified, she started lecturing him in English in public. He tried to brush it off like it was no big deal, but he got some nasty looks. Sorry that my customer service job wasn't enough for my past parents. Story 66. To make a long, not very interesting story short, I was basically demonstrating a product in a grocery store. I did not work for the store, and they knew that we were there. But we were only speaking with women that day. A man came up to me and I had to turn him away. We are always super polite. He marched immediately to the store management to try to get me fired. Okay, so first, I didn't work there. Second, as long as was not rude to a customer, store management just didn't care. Person didn't really know what company I did work for and they wouldn't have cared anyway as long. I acted in a professional manner. There was absolutely no reason for him to do this other than being in a hole because he wasn't female. I don't get it. Story 67. Once I opened up a conversation with a lady at my first cashier job and told her that I have been feeling better lately, tremendous anxiety, and she said, "That's nice, but I don't need a whole story." I didn't say much after that. Story 68. I had a guy threaten me when I told him the account he was trying to cash a check for had insufficient funds. I'm a 6 feet 5 inches, 240 pounds dude who was working out a lot at the time. I think he thought he was emasculating me with words or something, but my manager heard it, and before I could say anything, told the guy cops were being called, and he had 10 seconds to leave before we were pressing charges for threatening a bank worker. IDK, if that's a thing, but the guy seemed to have. He called us all something and left. That was light years by far the worst thing anyone said to me. We banned him from cashing the check in person at any branch. Had to mail it in, and it still bounced. Story 69. I'll literally never forget it. I was eating a banana on my lunch break. Customer walking around says, "Look at you sticking that thing in your mouth. Eating and sucking, it's all women are good for." They had the right of it in the 1930s. Men were men and women were things. Told him to duck off back to the 30s then. Was about 100 years old, so long dead by now. Story 70. Was working at a call center, and a guy said my voice was like listening to nails on a chalkboard because I wasn't giving him the deal he wanted. I actually snapped on him and demanded an apology. Story 71. Oh boy, that's a long list. The one I won't forget is when a customer who I was attempting to help decided to flirt with me via Google Translate. I've dealt with a number of creepy guys, but that one just made no sense. We can't efficiently communicate, and I am simply trying to do my job. I also told him I was engaged to hopefully get him to back off. It didn't work. But the most common one I get is being accused of being an illegal alien and lying about where I'm from. I have a speech impediment that for some reason people seem to think is an English accent, and they get mad when I tell them it's not. Story 72. I'll always curse the woman who huffed and puffed at the very clearly mentally and physically disabled man at my register. He was a regular, and my register was out of sight of the main line where there were 5 other cashiers for the morning rush. He always came to me because of that. There was space for his wheelchair, and since I usually had no other customers, he could take his time. For no reason at all, this clearly in a hurry woman comes up behind him and starts acting annoyed. She can stay annoyed forever. If I ever get the power to do so, I'll switch their places. That'll teach her some damn empathy. Story 73. I used to work at a nationwide semi-Italian restaurant. I was a bartender, and people would often come into the bar, order a drink, and then place a to-go order. This guy was the same. When he said he was going to place an order, I said, okay. And then he said, well, aren't you going to write this down? Strike one. I grabbed a coaster, and then he started with the order. Lasagna, chicken parm, and then he said, and here's where it gets complicated. I yelled at my co-bartender down the counter and said, Lisa, I might need me some help with this order. This felly said it's going to get complicated. The complicated thing? A side of meatballs with melted cheese. Story 74. Not gay, but got called a mother ducker when I wouldn't let a woman shoplift. Got called a hole when I said I would not take a women's child to use the bathroom. I told her she could take her child, but I would not feel comfortable. I coughed at work, and a woman came all the way from the other side of the store to ask, are you sick? My mother could pass if I get exposed to sickness. How dare you come to work sick? This is pre-pandemic days. Being a manager in retail was the worst. I'm so happy I got out. People are just awful when they know you can't be mean back to them. Sigh. Story 75. Some of my colleagues have had customers click their fingers at them. Also had customer. But while I was in the middle of dealing with another customer, didn't get a chance to say anything, as that customer tore the ruse customer to shreds, which was fun and satisfying to watch. Also, we have had an announcement made last Friday to not engage with shoplifters, as we had one draw a knife on one of the staff members before running off. I'm waiting for the day for a customer to click their fingers at me. Because that one scene from Hell's Kitchen where that lady whistles at Gordon Ramsay, and his response, it pretty much what'll be using.